Captain Kim Taiho stood on the dock, watching the morning mist rise from Lake Harrison. After 10 years commanding mining fleets in the Proxima Centauri system, the silence felt strange. No plasma engines humming, no asteroid collision alerts. Just water lapping against his converted orbital shuttle that now served as his floating home. The shuttle looked out of place among the fancy lakeside mansions, but Taiho didn't care. The old transport vessel had carried him through 3 solar systems and countless asteroid fields. Its scarred hull told stories of meteor showers and space pirate attacks. The retractable solar wings, now permanently extended, caught the morning sun like a sleeping metal bird. Inside their lakeside cottage, his wife, Park Mina, hummed while preparing breakfast. She'd waited 12 years for him to come home from the outer colonies. Now they finally had their peaceful retirement. That peace shattered at exactly 9:30 a.m. 3 expensive cars pulled into their gravel driveway, doors slamming like gunshots. Taiho watched from his kitchen window as 5 people in business suits marched toward his front door. Their leader was a tall man with perfectly styled hair and a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The doorbell rang, once sharp and demanding. Mina opened the door to find a young woman with cold eyes and a briefcase. "Mrs. Park, I'm Choi Hyejin, secretary for the Pinecrest Homeowners Association. We need to speak with your husband immediately." "What about?" Mina asked, but the woman was already pushing past her into the living room. The group spread out like an invasion force. The tall man in the expensive suit surveyed their modest home with obvious disgust. Behind him stood a shorter man with a permanent sneer, flanked by 2 other officials clutching folders. "Where is he?" the tall man demanded. Taiho emerged from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. His movements were unhurried, but something in his posture made the visitors instinctively step back. Years of commanding mining crews in hostile space had given him an aura that civilian bullies recognized on a primal level. "I'm Kim Taiho. What can I do for you?" The tall man straightened his tie. "I'm Lee Dong-yun, chairman of the Pinecrest Homeowners Association. This is serious business, Mr. Kim." Hyejin stepped forward, pulling official-looking papers from her briefcase. "Your husband's orbital shuttle must be removed within 72 hours, she announced with practiced coldness. "It violates our community aesthetic standards and severely disrupts our exclusive fishing club operations." Taiho accepted the papers, his weathered hands steady, despite the obvious attempt at intimidation. These were hands that had piloted mining, ships through asteroid fields, hands that had rebuilt engines in zero gravity while wearing a pressure suit. A few bureaucrats with fancy letterhead didn't make them shake. "Aesthetic standards," he repeated quietly, scanning the document. The sneering man behind Dong-yun couldn't contain himself. "That thing is an eyesore, old man. This is a respectable neighborhood, not some junkyard for space garbage." "Nam Jisoo, fishing club president," Dong-yun introduced with obvious pride. "Mr. Jisoo represents our most valued community members." Jisoo jabbed a manicured finger toward the lake. "Our fishing tournaments bring prestigious guests here. Senators, corporate executives, people who matter. They don't want to look at some rusty spaceship while they're trying to relax." Taiho's expression never changed, but something shifted in the room's atmosphere. The other HOA members suddenly found themselves studying their shoes, sensing danger they couldn't quite identify. "I'd like to see the property boundaries," Taiho said calmly. Hyejin blinked. "Property boundaries?" "Yes. The exact legal description of where your authority begins and ends." His voice carried the same tone he'd used when questioning suspicious asteroid miners about their cargo manifests. Dong-yun waved dismissively. "That's irrelevant. The community covenant clearly states—" "I wasn't asking about covenants," Taiho interrupted gently. "I want to see surveyed property lines, official county records, GPS coordinates." The group exchanged glances. This wasn't going according to their script. Jisoo's sneer deepened. "Listen, space cowboy, this isn't negotiable. That floating junk pile goes, or we'll have it towed. We've got connections with the sheriff's department." "The sheriff?" Taiho repeated thoughtfully. "That's right. Sheriff Bradley's been a member of our fishing club for 15 years. One phone call and your toy boat becomes scrap metal." Mina moved closer to her husband, recognizing the subtle signs. Taiho's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. His coffee mug found the nearby table with deliberate precision. "Gentlemen, ladies," Tai-Ho said finally, his military bearing becoming unmistakable. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I'll need some time to review the documentation properly." Dong-hyun's confident smile faltered slightly. Something about the way this retired spacer stood suggested he wasn't dealing with another intimidated homeowner. 72 hours, Yejin repeated, snapping her briefcase shut. Not 1 minute longer. As the HOA delegation filed out, Jisoo couldn't resist one final jab. "Welcome to Earth, Captain. Things work differently down here." After their cars disappeared down the winding road, Mina touched her husband's arm. "What are you thinking?" Tai-Ho walked to the window, gazing at his old shuttle floating peacefully beside the dock. Sunlight glinted off its patched hull, each scar a memory of battles fought in the darkness between stars. "I'm thinking," he said quietly, "they have no idea what they just walked into." The Pinecrest Community Center buzzed with excited chatter as HOA members filed into the main conference room. Chairman Lee Dong-hyun had called an emergency meeting promising entertainment. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood about the crazy space veteran who thought he could defy their authority. "This should be good," whispered Mrs. Song Jahye, clutching her designer handbag. "I heard the towing company is already on standby." Nam Jisoo lounged in his usual front row seat, checking messages on his expensive phone. Sheriff Bradley confirmed everything's arranged. One call, and that space junk becomes a very expensive artificial reef. The room held about 40 people, mostly wealthy retirees and successful business owners who'd bought into Pinecrest for its exclusivity. They'd dealt with troublemakers before. A few lawyer letters, some pressure from the right connections, and problems simply vanished. Dong-hyun called the meeting to order, his confident smile practically glowing. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss the Kim situation. As you know, Mr. Kim has refused our reasonable request to remove his eyesore from our pristine lake." Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the crowd. However, Dong-hyun continued, "I'm pleased to announce that Sheriff Bradley has agreed to assist with immediate towing operations. The offending vessel will be removed within the hour." Applause broke out, but it died abruptly when the conference room door opened. Kim Tae-ho stepped inside, carrying a worn leather briefcase that looked like it had traveled through several star systems. He'd traded his casual clothes for a crisp, military-style uniform, deep blue with subtle insignia that made several veterans in the audience sit up straighter. "Am I late?" Tai-ho asked politely. The room fell silent. Something about his presence changed the entire atmosphere. This wasn't the defeated old man they'd expected to see. Dong-hyun's smile flickered. "Mr. Kim, this is a private HOA meeting. Residents aren't—" "Actually, I think I have standing to be here," Tai-ho interrupted gently, setting his briefcase on the conference table. "Before you proceed with your towing operation, there are a few things you should know." He opened the briefcase with deliberate precision, revealing stacks of official documents, digital storage drives, and what looked like military commendations in protective cases. "First," Tai-ho said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention across vast distances of space, "allow me to properly introduce myself. I'm Captain Kim Tai-ho, formerly of the Centauri Defense Fleet, veteran of the Proxima mining wars, and lead coordinator for the asteroid belt colonization project." The room's energy shifted like air pressure dropping before a storm. Several people recognized those credentials. The Proxima mining wars had been humanity's first real conflict with hostile alien mining corporations trying to claim human-discovered asteroids. The colonization project had established humanity's first permanent settlements beyond the solar system. Jisoo's perpetual sneer faded for the first time anyone could remember. "During my service," Tai-ho continued, spreading documents across the table, "I commanded mining fleets that extracted more rare minerals from space than most Earth corporations see in a decade. We fought off Zephyrian raiders who thought human settlements were easy targets." Mrs. Song leaned forward. "Zephyrian raiders. Silicon-based pirates from the Vega system. They'd attack mining operations, steal equipment, and kidnap human workers to sell as curiosities in alien slave markets. Taiho's tone remained conversational, but the room temperature seemed to drop. We stopped that practice permanently. He pulled out a tablet displaying holographic star charts. The asteroid belt project required establishing supply lines across 3 star systems. We built space stations that housed 50,000 colonists each, created artificial atmospheres on dead worlds, turned frozen rocks into thriving communities. The holographic display showed massive space structures, sleek ships moving between stars, and bustling orbital cities that dwarfed anything on Earth. But more importantly for today's discussion, Taiho said, returning to his papers, I own this entire lake and the surrounding watershed. The silence stretched like the void between stars. Dongyun found his voice first. That's impossible. Taiho spread out property deeds, survey maps, and legal documents. Zenith Holdings Corporation, my off-world investment company, registered in the Kepler Commercial Zone. I purchased this property 20 years ago while stationed at the Kepler 4142 mining facility. Haya Jin's face went pale as she recognized official county seals on the documents. This can't be legal. Oh, it's perfectly legal. Interstellar commerce regulations allow off-world corporations to purchase Earth real estate. The transaction was processed through the Galactic Trade Commission and registered with your county clerk's office. Taiho's finger traced property, lines on a detailed survey map. Lake Harrison, the surrounding forests, the watershed extending 12 miles in every direction. The map clearly showed the boundaries. The fishing club building sat squarely in the middle of Taiho's property. The boat launches, the fancy docks, even the parking areas belong to him. Your fishing club operates under a lease agreement, signed with the previous owner, Taiho explained. When Zenith Holdings purchased the property, we inherited those leases. They expired 3 years ago. Jisoo jumped to his feet. Nobody told us about any expired leases. The renewal notices were sent to the address on file. Unfortunately, the previous fishing club president apparently moved to Florida without updating his contact information. Taiho showed them certified mail receipts. Legal requirements were met. The room erupted in angry voices, but Taiho raised his hand for silence. When a man who'd commanded asteroid mining fleets gestured for quiet, people listened. Approximately half of your luxury homes also sit on my property, he continued. The original developer sold lots he didn't own, assuming the transactions would never be challenged. Mrs. Song's expensive handbag slipped from nerveless fingers. My house? Your house, Mr. Park's mansion, the Chen family's estate, and 15 others. All built on Zenith Holdings land, under agreements that were never properly executed. Dongyun's confident smile had completely vanished. What do you want? Taiho closed his briefcase with the same deliberate precision he'd used to open it. What I wanted was to retire peacefully with my wife, to watch sunrises over my lake without being harassed by people who think they own something they never purchased. He stood, and somehow seemed taller than when he'd entered. Instead, you threatened to tow my ship that survived meteor storms in the Proxima system, alien attacks in the asteroid belt, and hyperspace jumps across half the galaxy. The room held its collective breath. Sheriff Bradley is welcome to try, Taiho said calmly. But he should know that my shuttle's defense systems are still active, old habits from dealing with space pirates. Without another word, he walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he turned back. Oh, and the 72-hour deadline. It expired an hour ago. Chairman Lee Dong-hyun stormed out of the community center, his face red with humiliation. 40. Wealthy neighbors had watched him get destroyed by a retired spaceman with a briefcase. His carefully constructed authority had crumbled in minutes. This isn't over, he muttered, pulling out his phone. Get me Yang & Associates, I don't care what it costs. The law firm of Yang & Associates specialized in making problems disappear. They'd helped Dong-hyun bury environmental violations, silence whistleblowers, and crush opposition to his development projects. If legal documents wouldn't work, they had other methods. Within days, the harassment began. Park Mina discovered their mailbox smashed with a baseball bat, letters scattered across the gravel driveway. Someone had spray-painted crude messages on their fence posts. Dead fish appeared in her carefully tended garden, rotting in the morning sun. The phone calls started at 3 a.m. Heavy breathing, whispered threats, promises of violence if they didn't pack up and leave. Mina stopped answering, but the calls kept coming. "They're trying to break us down," she told Tejo over breakfast. "Make us so miserable we'll just give up." Tejo sipped his coffee, watching through the kitchen window as a black sedan made its third slow pass of the morning. "I've seen this before. On Kepler 442, mining corporations used the same tactics against independent prospectors. The psychological pressure escalated daily. Security cameras around their property mysteriously malfunctioned. Delivery trucks got lost and never brought their groceries. Even the internet service developed mysterious outages. But the final insult came on a quiet Tuesday morning. Mina's scream brought Tejo running from the house. She stood on the dock, pointing at his beloved shuttle with trembling hands. Someone had spray-painted space trash across the hull in dripping red letters. The same hull that had carried him through 3 star systems, survived asteroid impacts and alien weapon fire. The ship that had been his home, his sanctuary, his partner in countless dangerous missions. For the first time since returning to Earth, Tejo's military mask slipped completely. His hands clenched into fists. The temperature around him seemed to drop as memories flooded back. Zephyrian raiders boarding his ship, robotic mining drones trying to steal his cargo, corporate assassins sent to eliminate competition in the outer colonies. "Honey," Mina whispered, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "They have no idea what they're dealing with." Tejo stared at the vandalized shuttle for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back into the house with purposeful strides. In his study, he opened a secure cabinet and pulled out a device that looked like it belonged on a starship. Bridge. The military communicator hummed to life, establishing encrypted connections across multiple star systems. "This is Captain Kim," he said quietly. "Authorization code Alpha 77 Delta. I'm calling in some favors." The response was immediate. "Captain, good to hear your voice. What do you need?" "I need some friends to visit Earth. Personal matter." "Say no more. We'll be there." Within a week, distinguished visitors began arriving at Lake Harrison. The first was Admiral Yu Seung-ho, commander of the Space Defense Council and Tejo's former executive officer. His sleek diplomatic shuttle landed on the lake like a silver bird, drawing curious stares from across the water. "Captain," Seung-ho said, embracing his old commander, "you look good for a retired man." Not so retired anymore, it seems. The second arrival caused even more excitement. Corporate mogul An Mik-young controlled mining operations on 3 colony worlds and owned the largest shipping fleet in human-themed space. Her luxury yacht settled beside Seung-ho's shuttle, its quantum engines humming softly. "Still living modestly, I see," she teased, admiring Tejo's simple lakeside home. "Simple pleasures," he replied, though apparently too simple for some people's taste. The third visitor made the local news. Senator Kang Ji-young, chair of the Military Affairs Committee, arrived in an official government transport with a full security detail. Reporters gathered at the property gates, speculating about secret meetings and classified briefings. That evening, as the 4 old friends shared dinner on Tejo's deck, the truth finally emerged. "So why did you really buy this place?" Seung-ho asked, gazing across the peaceful lake. Tejo smiled, pulling out a geological survey tablet. The holographic display showed subsurface mineral deposits in brilliant detail. Beneath Lake Harrison, extending deep into the Earth's crust, lay a massive formation of crystalline structures glowing like captured starlight. "Quantum crystals," Mik-young breathed. "The largest deposit I've ever seen." "That's essential for faster-than-light engines," Ji-young added. "Without these, our entire colonial expansion would collapse." Tejo nodded. 20 years ago, our long-range mineral scanners detected this formation during a routine Earth flyby. I realized what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands. The implications were staggering. Corporate mining giants would strip mine the entire area. Foreign governments would claim territorial rights. Earth's most strategic resource would become a battlefield. "So you bought the lake," Seung-ho said admiringly, "protecting humanity's future while pretending to be a simple retiree." "The crystals need specific environmental conditions to maintain their quantum properties," Tejo explained. "Temperature, humidity, electromagnetic fields. disturb the ecosystem, and they become worthless space rock. Mikyung raised her glass. To Captain Kim, still saving humanity, one strategic purchase at a time. As they toasted, lights began appearing across the lake. The HOA members had noticed the unusual activity. Black sedans lined the distant shoreline, occupants using binoculars, and cameras to monitor the gathering. "Looks like you've attracted attention," Ji-young observed. Tai-ho's smile was cold as deep space. "Good. Let them watch. Let them wonder who they're really dealing with." In the distance, Chairman Dong-yun's mansion blazed with lights as he made frantic phone calls. The retired spaceman he'd thought to intimidate was hosting admirals, senators, and corporate titans. Whatever game they were playing, the stakes had just become galactic. The quantum crystals pulsed gently beneath the lake, their alien energy patterns invisible to human eyes, but essential to humanity's greatest achievement. And standing guard over them all was a man who'd already proven he'd fight anyone who threatened the future of his species. Chairman Lee Dong-yun paced his mansion's marble floor like a caged animal. Through his floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the lake where military shuttles and corporate yachts floated like invasion fleet. His carefully built empire was crumbling, and desperation made him dangerous. "Sir, the lawyers say we can't fight this," his assistant stammered. "The property documents are legitimate. The leases really did expire." Dong-yun slammed his fist on the mahogany desk. "I don't care about legal documents. This is my neighborhood, my lake, my fishing club." His eyes gleamed with desperate fury. "If I can't have it, nobody can." He pulled out his encrypted phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. "Commissioner Park, it's Dong-yun. I need that favor you owe me." County Commissioner Park Chan-woo had been taking bribes from Dong-yun's development company for years. Zoning violations overlooked, environmental reports buried, permits fast-tracked through corrupt channels. "What kind of favor?" Chan-woo asked nervously. "The industrial waste treatment plant upstream from Lake Harrison. I need an accident to happen. A malfunction. Something that would contaminate the water badly enough to force evacuation." The phone went silent. "You're talking about ecological terrorism." "I'm talking about protecting property values. Make it look accidental. Blame old equipment, human error, whatever. Just make that lake toxic enough that the space hero and his fancy friends have to leave." Chan-woo's greed overcame his fear. "It'll cost extra. Hazmat cleanup, bribes to plant supervisors, falsified inspection reports. Name your price." 2 days later, the sabotage began. The Riverside Industrial Treatment Facility sat 5 miles upstream from Lake Harrison, processing chemical waste from 3 counties. At exactly 2:47 a.m., Supervisor Kim Youngmin opened release valves that should have stayed closed forever. Thousands of gallons of toxic industrial runoff poured into the stream feeding Lake Harrison. Heavy metals, industrial solvents, and chemical compounds that could kill fish at parts per million concentrations. By dawn, the contamination had reached the lake. Tai-ho was enjoying his morning coffee when his shuttle's environmental sensors started screaming. Alarms that had warned him of radiation leaks in deep space now detected lethal toxins in the water surrounding his home. "Mina, get inside," he called urgently. "Emergency protocols." She didn't question him. Years of marriage to a starship captain had taught her to trust his instincts. Within minutes, their house was sealed, air filtration systems activated. But the damage was already visible. Fish floated belly up near the shore. The crystal-clear water turned an ugly brown color. The smell of chemical death drifted across the lake. Tae-ho activated his military communicator. "Admiral Seung-ho, we have a problem. Someone just poisoned Lake Harrison." The response was immediate and devastating. Federal investigators had been monitoring the area since Senator Ji-young's visit. Quantum crystal deposits were classified as strategic national resources. Any threat to them triggered massive government response. Within 2 hours, federal vehicles surrounded the lake. Hazmat teams in full protective gear waded into the contaminated water. Environmental Protection Agency scientists took samples while FBI agents questioned every resident. The investigation moved with military precision. Satellite imagery tracked the contamination to its source. Water samples revealed the exact chemical signature of the industrial plant's waste stream. Phone records showed the late-night calls between Dong-hyun and Commissioner Park. By noon, the truth was undeniable. Federal Prosecutor Oh Kyung-soo arrived via government helicopter, his grim expression matching the environmental disaster spreading across the lake. He found Tai-ho standing on his dock, surrounded by hazmat teams and scientific equipment. "Captain Kim, what's the status of the quantum crystal matrix?" Tai-ho consulted a handheld scanner that looked like it belonged on a starship bridge. "The crystals are intact, but barely. The contamination is affecting the electromagnetic field that keeps them stable. If the toxin levels increase, we could lose Earth's entire faster-than-light fuel supply." The implications were staggering. Without quantum crystals, humanity's colony ships would be stranded in distant star systems. Trade routes would collapse. The entire galactic economy would crash. "This wasn't just vandalism," Kyung-soo said grimly. "This was attempted ecological terrorism against a strategic national resource." FBI agents were already making arrests. Commissioner Park was dragged from his office in handcuffs, his corruption exposed for the world to see. Plant supervisors faced federal charges for accepting bribes. The contamination trail led directly back to Dong-hyun's mansion. "What about the property disputes?" Kyung-soo asked. Tai-ho pulled out his communicator, broadcasting on open frequencies so every HOA member could hear. "Effective immediately, all. Expired leases are terminated. The fishing club is evicted. Anyone occupying Zenith Holdings property without valid agreements has 24 hours to vacate." The response was immediate chaos. Across the lake, Nam Ji-soo watched in horror as federal agents sealed the fishing club building with official tape. The boat launches were cordoned off with hazmat barriers. His prized fishing tournaments were cancelled indefinitely. Mrs. Song Ji-hee discovered that her $1 million mansion was built on land she'd never actually owned. Her mortgage company had been paying property taxes to the wrong entity for 15 years. The deed in her safe was worthless paper. 17 other homeowners faced the same devastating reality. Their luxury homes, their retirement investments, their social status symbols were all built on stolen land. Sheriff Bradley, who'd promised to tow Tai-ho's shuttle, found himself under federal investigation for accepting bribes from the fishing club. His 15-year corruption scheme unraveled in a single afternoon. The HOA's world crumbled like a house of cards in a solar wind. Emergency vehicles lined the shoreline as cleanup crews worked frantically to neutralize the contamination. Scientists from 3 universities studied the quantum crystal formation, trying to prevent permanent damage to humanity's most precious resource. Tai-ho stood guard over it all, his weathered face showing no satisfaction at his enemy's downfall. He'd seen what happened when greed and stupidity threatened humanity's future. In the asteroid belt, such people didn't get second chances. As evening fell, Dong-hyun's mansion blazed with lights as FBI agents searched every room. The man who'd tried to destroy a lake to protect his fishing club now faced federal terrorism charges. The quantum crystals pulsed weakly beneath the contaminated water, their alien energy patterns disrupted, but not destroyed. And standing watch over them was a man who'd already proven he'd fight anyone who threatened the future of his species. 6 months after the contamination crisis, Lake Harrison sparkled like liquid starlight under the morning sun. The cleanup had taken 3 months, but the quantum crystals beneath the water now pulsed stronger than ever. Federal scientists discovered that the emergency had actually stabilized the formation, creating the most powerful faster-than-light fuel source in known space. Where Nam Ji-soo's exclusive fishing club once stood, a sleek new building rose from the shoreline. The Colonial Preparation Academy bore no resemblance to the pretentious clubhouse it replaced. Solar panels gleamed on the roof, while observation decks extended over the water like the bridge of a starship. Inside, the transformation was even more dramatic. "Cadets, attention!" Commander Yoo Seung-ho called out to the 40 young recruits gathered in the main training hall. The former admiral now served as the Academy's Director of Space Combat Training. The students snapped to attention, their ages ranging from 18 to 25. They'd come from every continent, drawn by the opportunity to train under the legendary Captain Kim and his veteran team. Each had scored in the top 1% on the colonial service examinations. Today, we're studying hostile environment survival, Sungho announced. Specifically, what to do when your ship crashes on a planet with toxic atmosphere and aggressive native life forms. He activated a holographic display that filled the room with an alien landscape. Purple skies, crystalline trees, and something that looked like a cross between a spider and a tank, prowling through acidic fog. This is Kepler 438b, Sungho explained. Captain Kim's mining team spent 6 months stranded there after Zephyrian. Raiders destroyed their transport ship. The cadets leaned forward eagerly. Stories of Captain Kim's adventures had become legendary throughout human space. Across the academy, other classes were in session. Corporate mogul An Mikyung taught interstellar trade and resource management, using real examples from her 3 colony worlds. Senator Kang Ji-young led seminars on diplomatic protocol with alien species, drawing from humanity's growing contact with other civilizations. But the most popular instructor was Captain Kim himself. In the Academy's marine biology, Lab Taeho guided 20 students through the basics of terraforming. The lab occupied what had once been the fishing club's trophy room, though the mounted fish had been replaced by specimens from a dozen different worlds. The key to successful terraforming isn't imposing Earth conditions on alien worlds, Taeho explained, holding up a sample of blue-green algae that glowed softly in the dim light. It's finding the right balance between Earth life and native ecosystems. Cadet Lee Hyun-soo raised her hand. Captain, what about hostile native species? The briefings mentioned carnivorous plants on Proxima 3. Taeho smiled, remembering his first encounter with the 10-foot-tall Venus flytraps that hunted in packs. Sometimes cooperation isn't possible. On Proxima 3, we had to establish safe zones, using sonic barriers that disrupted the plants' hunting patterns. The colonists learned to work around them instead of trying to eliminate them. He pulled up footage from his personal archives. The holographic display showed massive jungle plants with teeth like chainsaws stalking through alien forests. Then, it switched to human settlements protected by glowing energy barriers, with children playing safely, while deadly predators prowled just beyond the light. Remember, we're not conquerors, Taeho continued. We're gardeners. We plant human civilization in alien soil and help it grow alongside whatever's already there. Outside the lab, the academy grounds buzzed with activity. Cadets practiced zero-gravity maneuvers in the swimming pool, learning to move in 3 dimensions without up or down. Others worked in the expanded gardens that Park Mina had designed, growing earth crops in alien soil samples to test compatibility. Mina's agricultural research program had become one of the Academy's crown jewels. Her greenhouses now covered the area where the fishing club's parking lot had been, filled with plants from 17 different worlds. She discovered that Rigel carrots grew twice as large in Earth soil, while Terran tomatoes developed resistance to cosmic radiation when cross-pollinated with Centauri variants. Mrs. Park, the new seedlings from Kepler 442 are showing remarkable growth, reported Cadet Park Seonho, carefully tending rows of silver-leafed plants that sparkled like metal. Excellent, Mina replied, making notes on her tablet. These could provide oxygen in low-atmosphere environments. Your colony ships won't need as much life support equipment. The transformation extended to the lake itself. Taeho's old shuttle no longer floated alone. 3 training vessels now shared the water, each designed for different aspects of colonial preparation. A deep space reconnaissance craft taught navigation and exploration. An orbital construction pod provided engineering experience. A diplomatic shuttle prepared cadets for first contact with alien civilizations. But Taeho's original shuttle remained the centerpiece, its scarred hull now bearing the Academy's insignia alongside its battle honors from the Proxima mining wars. Cadets competed for the privilege of maintaining the legendary vessel that had survived encounters with space pirates, alien predators, and corporate assassins. As evening approached, the day's final exercise began. 20 cadets suited up in environmental gear for water survival training, learning to operate in hostile conditions. They moved through the lake like astronauts practicing spacewalks, their movements carefully controlled and purposeful. Taeho and Mina watched from their porch, the same spot where they'd once enjoyed quiet retirement. Now their home overlooked humanity's premier training ground for colonial expansion. "Do you think they'll understand what we've preserved here?" Mina asked, gesturing toward the cadets practicing in the water above the quantum crystal deposits. Tai-Ho smiled, watching young faces filled with determination and wonder, visible through their helmet visors. These weren't privileged elites playing at exclusivity. These were humanity's future, preparing to carry civilization to distant stars. "They will," he said confidently, "and they'll carry it to the stars." Above the Academy's main entrance, where Namjisu's pretentious fishing club sign had once proclaimed exclusivity, new words were carved in letters that caught the starlight. Ad Astra. To the stars. The quantum crystals pulsed gently beneath the lake, their alien energy patterns now serving their true purpose, not as trophies for the wealthy, but as fuel for humanity's greatest adventure. And standing guard over them all was a man who'd already proven he'd fight anyone who threatened the future of his species. The lake that had once been a playground for entitled elites was now a training ground for heroes. The future of human civilization was in good hands. The end.